Hi. Well, it's another beautiful day out there. And today I want to talk about a few things. Now, really, what's going on is that you are part of a system. And that system is to survive. Everything that you're doing is based off of the will to survive. Okay? And that's like the basic level of where we're at right now. Okay? And survival's great, it's good, but it's not everything. You were born into your life form. Okay? And that life form was taught how to be a human being. you know? And so that's what you are. But you're much more than that. And what you are really is you are the universe. You're everything. Because you are connected to everything through your soul. And what happens is that all these things get in the way of us knowing that because that's just the way it is. And whether it's the illusion of time, which it is for most people, because you're constantly thinking about what's going to happen in the future, trying to make sure the right things happen. And when they don't, then you're going to feel bad about yourself. That's just the way it is. Every day, we have to do what we have to do. And part of that is accepting the way things are. But we make believe that things are different than the way they are. because that's what we've been taught to do. You're playing a game that you don't even know you're playing because you were never taught it was a game, but that's what it is. And that game is that you have a role, and that's what you play your role. And whatever that role is, that's what you think you are. If somebody says to you, "Who are you?" you're going to say, "Oh, I'm such and such from such and such, and I work at such and such." Right? And that's what you say. And that's your role. Or I'm so and so's father, or I'm so and so's mother, or I'm a doctor, or a fireman, or a policeman. Whatever it is. That's the role that you have taken on. And you think that's who you are. But that's not who you are because you are a soul. Yes, you're a human being. Yes, that's true. Okay? But you're so much more than that as well. And that so much moreness is waiting for you to find it because for whatever reason, we weren't taught how to find it. That's just the way it was. We were taught how to be successful. Get a good job. Go to school. Learn how to get a good job. Learn how to do something that will pay you a lot of money. That's what we've been taught how to do. And so that's what we've all been chasing. And playing our roles. And those roles lead to unhappiness. Because if you think you're a such and such, okay, let's say it's a policeman, and then one day you get injured or whatever, you can't do your job, you're no longer a policeman. Now you're unhappy because you're not a policeman anymore. Or if you're a mom and your kids are grown up and gone, and you have no one to mother, you're unhappy because of that fact. Because you think you're a mom. You think that's who you are, but that's not who you are. That's just who you have chosen to be. And as long as we cling to these roles, then we're going to be in unhappiness, suffering. Now, I know that it's really hard to try and step out of a role that you're in and see that it's not you. I get that. But as long as you are in that role, you're going to have suffering. You're going to have unhappiness. I mean, that's the way it is. We all need to step out of our roles and experience what life should be like without having to have a definition around us. Okay? That's what a role is. It's your definition. Okay? And the problem with having a definition is that you're trapped in that definition. Okay? It's what people think you do, and it's what they think you'll always do. That's who you are. Okay? Or eventually you're a retired policeman. Okay? But you're still a policeman. Any policeman will tell you that when the push comes to shove, they're a policeman. Even if they're not on duty, they are ready. That's the way it is. Or a mother will tell you that. So, what we have to try and do is shed these roles that really aren't us. And if we cling to the role, if we cling to it as some form of normalcy or as some form of sanity, that role helps us know who we are. Well, okay, maybe it does, but it doesn't really let you know who you are because you are a soul. And that role has nothing to do with that soul. I mean, for instance, if you want to have a good life, okay, then you know the steps to get that. Go to school, earn a degree, get a good job, so on and so forth. And become who you think you're supposed to be. But the problem with that is that it doesn't lead you to anything except more unhappiness, because that is the nature of being. In this world, there is so much suffering and unhappiness because it's helping you to wake up. All right? Yeah, it's sad. So sad that people have to suffer. But in the suffering is grace. Because only through suffering can you awaken. And not only through suffering, but it's one of the ways that people can awaken. It's the way I awakened. But you don't have to suffer. You don't have to spend the next 20 years suffering in order to awaken. You can awaken now by simply accepting who you really are. I know that's hard. You have to try and find your soulness, that feeling inside of you that you've experienced in a variety of places in your life. And that is who you are. If you're clinging to these other things, like roles, to define you, then you're stuck in a trap, because you shouldn't be defined. There's no defining a soul. I know it's nice to have normalcy. It's nice to be able to say, I am thus. Okay? And that I have a specific task in this world that I must do, and so on and so forth. Okay? Yeah, that's great. But if we take that to the point of saying that's what I am, identifying with that task, then we're going to be in suffering. So try to free yourself from that role by accepting what is, accepting that you are a soul. I know it's hard. I know it's a hard thing, but as long as you're identifying with these other things, you can't be free, and that's what you want to be. I mean, I don't know everything about life, that's for sure. Okay? And but I do know that suffering for 40, 60 years is the bad part of it. That's all there's to it. Okay? And we don't want to have that be our life, do we? No. And so that's why I'm trying to explain how you can get free of these things. Like time. If you're always looking toward the future, projecting yourself into the future, then you can't be free. Or if you're always looking toward the past, projecting yourself into the past, reliving your past glories, you can't be free either. Only by realizing that there is no such thing as time. Time is a construct we created in order to make the day more manageable. That's it. Why did someone first invent the sundial? Because they wanted to know about time. But time only has one thing in it, and that is the now. And if we are in the now, then we are also with God, or the conscious collective of the universe. Okay? And that is what is important. I know it's easy for me to say that. Okay? That your life is important to you. That's what's important. And that, to some extent, that's your point of view. But you can see a way through the suffering, the unhappiness that plagues us all. And that is by letting go of your definition. Okay? Letting go of your definition. You are not defined. You cannot be defined because you are a soul. Therefore, there is no definition for you. As long as you believe that you have a definition, then you can be controlled. Okay? I mean, it's just the way the government and everything else works. If you have a job and you say, I am that job, right? That's what you say. Then that's a definition of you. And that cheapens or brings you down because that's not who you are. And we identify with these definitions because that's what we've been taught to do. Because the world is a messed up place. Okay? That's just the way it is. And wrong ideas have been taught down through the ages to help people get through that messed up place. And that's the way that is. But unless you want to have a life free from unhappiness, okay, which includes anxiety, fear, jealousy, anger, hate, which I assume you don't want any of those in your life, then you have to look at life in a different way and stop being defined by what you do. Of course, you have to keep doing it. No one's saying you can't keep doing it. But by being defined by it, you limit yourself. Okay? And no one wants to be limited, right? So therefore, You have to let it go. And every day we have to make a decision. Are we who we think we are? Are we defined by our job or any other thing? Like your family. Are you defined by your family? You're a mother? Is that who you are? In which case, you're going to have suffering. Because eventually the kids will grow up and move away. That's what happens. And how many lonely Mother's Days do you need to know that being a mother isn't all it's cracked up to be? And that maybe you can step away from that role and be who you really are, which is free. Even though you are in suffering now, the freedom is there within you. You just have to reach out and grasp it, or reach in and grasp it. Because all these things that society has laid down upon you, okay, and it starts with the ABCs, right? I mean, you taught how to speak. You're taught how to talk, just by the very fact that people are talking around you, okay? And these words can become who you are if you let. If you, it's no letting it. That's what happens, okay? Language is very tricky, and if you think you're one thing, then you're going to suffer, because you're not one thing. You're everything. I know it's hard to realize that you are everything, but that is who you are. And the proof that you are everything is when you look up at the stars, okay? Or you go into the forest, or anything else you want to talk about that's having to do with nature. Because when you do that, you're connecting with things, okay? And that connection goes directly to your soul, and you can feel it. And you can know that that is who you are. But I've already told you about that many times. The point is, this world is very confusing, okay? You grow up and immediately they want to know what you want to be. Right? And you have to pick something. You have to pick what you want to be. Okay? And you, an 18-year-old or even younger 15-year-old, have to decide on something. And that's just it. Okay? And whatever you pick, that turns into your role, which then defines you and traps you into being that. Look, that's just the way things work. There is nothing else we can do but be what we have chosen to be. Right? But what you don't know is that you are actually not what you've chosen to be. You were never meant to be that. You were meant to be God's eyes and ears. That's why you keep getting sent down here, okay? That's why you're on earth. That's why you're in a body. That's why you have this beautiful world to look at, okay? And when your soul goes back to heaven to rejoin God, to become part of God again, all of that information will get downloaded into God. Now, all of that is just conjecture, but there's no way of knowing what's going to happen. There's no way of knowing if, you know, when you die, you're going to be into oblivion and never going to exist again, or something else. But my beliefs aren't really an issue. What is at issue is what I have experienced. And what I have experienced is God. And that experience of God is waiting for you. But in order to get there, you have to let go of these things you're holding on to, like time. No matter what you think you can do to make the future come out the way you want, it's not going to work. Okay, maybe in rare cases it will work. Okay, but plenty of people out there that have made the future the way they want it to be. But there's only one problem with that, is the future doesn't exist. And you're putting your energy into something that doesn't exist. Or you're putting your energy into the past, which also doesn't exist. Because there's only one thing in time that does exist, and that is the now. When the future comes, it will be the now. And if you're not in the now, then you're missing the most important part of existing. And that is contact with God. Contact with the cosmic collective. Consciousness collective. Okay? That's what it's all about. Whether you believe in God or not, doesn't really matter. I tend to think of it as the source of all life and intelligence in the universe. But a lot of people like the word God. And it's just a word. Once again, the language is very tricky. What does God mean? Well, it doesn't mean an old man in a white beard sitting on a throne in heaven. That's not what it means. Okay? That's what the people who want to control you want it to mean. Okay? And that's the church. What it means is something that does not exist in this world, that exists in the formless dimension, that has nothing but love, peace, joy, wisdom, creativity to give you. Maybe you think that your life is just fine, that you've got no suffering, that everything's going along perfectly. Great. But the suffering is going to come, because that is the nature of being. And the more you cling to things like time, like the permanence of things, the world is not permanent, it's impermanent. As long as you're clinging to the permanence of things, like, I'm going to be here tomorrow, this house is going to be here tomorrow, this car is going to be here tomorrow, and so on and so forth throughout the years, and everything's going to be fine. Well, that's just not the way it is. The way it is that everything is constantly changing. Okay? That's what it is. And we are one step away from total oblivion. This world, I mean. Okay? Because there are people with atomic bombs who could blow them off. Okay? And some people are very close to doing that. You know, the Indians and the Pakistanis, Putin, and Russia. Okay? So there's no way of knowing what's going to happen. There's no point in preparing for a future that may never happen. But if we cling to that future, if we cling to what an idea is, we make a model of what we want the world to be, and we cling to that model. And part of that model is the fact that you're in a role. You may not think you're in a role. You may think that you're just doing what you're doing or whatever, but you're playing a role in a game you know nothing about. And that game is suffering. And that's just the way it is. I don't want anyone to be unhappy, but the world does not allow for anyone not to be unhappy. That's just the way that is, too. Okay? Everyone must take their toll of suffering. Everyone has their cross to bear. Okay? But there's a way out of it, and that way is to see who you are, feel who you are, be who you are, not who the world wants you to be, not what the role says you're supposed to be, not what your family wants you to be, but who you actually are, which is a soul. And I mean, I know plenty of people in this world have problems with understanding who they are, trying to understand what the world is all about. And, you know, plenty of people have tried to find themselves and so on and so forth. But in the end, in order to find yourself, you have to sort of accept that you, the thinking you, doesn't really exist. It's all an illusion. Because in the real, that's above what we think of as real. Okay? Only one thing matters, and that is being with God. In the not so real, like the world, the important thing is making a lot of money or being successful and having a role. And you stick to that role, no matter what. And that causes unhappiness. That's just the way it is. Because by trying to be defined, you're basically turning yourself into an object. I'm a nurse. I'm a policeman. I'm a whatever. You're basically turning yourself into an object. And your thinking is based on concepts, which are objects. Okay? And when you think about yourself, you think bad things about yourself because that's just the way it is. Okay? And that thinking is the problem. You can easily decide that what I'm saying just doesn't matter, which maybe it doesn't. Or you could say, maybe this guy's making some sense. I don't know everything, but I do know that in this world, all the stuff they want you to do, like getting a good job, going to school, so on and so forth, doesn't get you anywhere. Because in the end, it's all empty. It's surface. Okay? It's like being a wave. You're a wave on an ocean, and you think that you're a separate wave. and then, you know, you're waving along, and then you hit the shore. And part of you goes up on the shore, and part of you comes back, and now your waveness has been destroyed. But you're still the water. You don't have to be a wave as long as you're the water, because the water is what matters. And that's all there is to it. And by being who you truly are, you can have contact with God. Okay? And you can be happy because there's nothing to be sad about. I mean, this whole waking up stuff is very difficult to understand, I know. But it's just a simple matter of letting go of what you're holding on to. And one of the things you're holding on to is your role. You can have freedom. Freedom is available to you. But first, you have to let go of these things: time, separateness, permanence, all of which are traps. And all these traps work together. Okay? To keep the blindfold over your eyes. Because that's what you are, is you're blindfolded. Because you think that you are a person. And the blindfold has been neatly pulled over your eyes to make you believe that. Okay? And as long as you do believe that, then you can't be free. That's all there is to it. Well, the clock on the wall is telling me it's time to go. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'm happy to answer them in the comments or on a video. Please, if you can, share this video with others, and have a great life.